Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. You're spouting so much nonsense. Huo Yuhao said plainly, aren't you afraid that I'll recover all my strength during this time? Zhongli Wu laughed out loud. So what if you recover? Do you really think you can challenge me one-on-one? Furthermore, what you've expended before along with the Holy Lady's strength isn't that easy to recover from. I'm spouting so much nonsense to you only because I'm confident of defeating you. The heavens and the earth will change as the winds and clouds rumble. A strange sight occurred as Zhongli Wu exclaimed those words. The giant dragon beneath his feet suddenly turned green, and the dark clouds in the sky turned green at the same time. Strong winds gusted through the air, and the heavens and earth did seem to change in that moment. Wind. This was the power of wind, and Zhongli Wu was completely unlike an evil soul master at this point. Strong winds billowed as tiny tornadoes appeared in the sky and swept toward Huo Yuhao. Frightening winds gusted at him, and the elements of water in the sky swiftly plummeted as Huo Yuhao's star anise icy coagulation was dispelled just like that. Such powerful winds. Is this the Silver Dragon King's mastery over the elements? This peculiar fighting style was entirely out of a normal soul master scope, and not a single person could tell what soul skill Zhongli Wu was using. He was using his beast spirit to fight, and his beast spirit was entirely different from Huo Yuhao's spirits. Huo Yuhao was the only person who could understand a little about what was happening at a time like this. He still couldn't tell what Zhongli Wu's martial soul was, but he could be sure that Zhongli Wu had relied on his martial soul to capture this Bone Dragon King as his beast spirit. Zhongli Wu should be targeting soul beasts, but there were so many soul beasts agonizing cries, while he only had one beast spirit. This meant that those soul beasts that Zhongli Wu had killed had probably become nourishment for this Bone Dragon King. It was no wonder he wanted to chase down and kill the beast god, Di Qian. Of course, Zhongli Wu wouldn't use this Bone Dragon King to consume the beast god if he was successful. Instead, he would directly control the beast god as his new beast spirit, and he would probably use that new beast spirit to consume this Bone Dragon King. Zhongli Wu's own strength increased continuously, with this continuous cycle of the strong swallowing the strong. Zhongli Wu evolved with every instance. When Zhongli Wu's spirit was sufficiently powerful, he would consume other soul beasts to strengthen his beast spirit. When his own beast spirit wasn't strong enough, he would go the other way and change his beast spirit. Zhongli Wu himself probably wasn't sure how many soul beasts had died at his hands from the beginning of his career until now, when he was a transcendent dueler. His soul skills were probably all auxiliary skills to support his beast spirit. What a formidable evil soul master. He has his own salient characteristics, an overbearing might. Huo Yuhao shook his arms amid the strong winds and swiftly soared into the sky. However, he realized to his surprise that he couldn't really control his body, as his attempt at breaking out wasn't successful. Any kind of flight had to rely on air resistance and air flow, whether the individual flying was using the air in the sky or releasing air from his own body. When Huo Yuhao released his soul power once more, he found that the air around him had been completely sucked away. Huo Yuhao's soul power landed in empty space, and his body barely moved before he stopped. Right at this moment, enormous green blades of wind that were several meters long and about a meter thick cut down toward him from all directions. Ear-piercing crackles could be heard as gashes were opened in the air again and again. Huo Yuhao felt like the air around him had been shattered, and he was about to be torn apart. Strength like this is just too frightening. I can't fight, and I can't even control my own movement. What do I do? Do I take this head on? These winds are actually so powerful. Huo Yuaho's eyes glowed as he swept his right arm in front of him, and he began to move. Light flickered as he vanished into thin air just like that. Right when everyone thought that he had used instant teleportation, he reappeared at his original spot. Huo Yuhao's disappearance and reappearance coincidentally evaded the first few blades. He to phase in and out on the spot, and his position seemed to change a little, but those changes weren't big. Zhongli Wu raised the staff in his hands, and his expression became even darker as he watched what was happening. However, there was only astonishment deep in his eyes. Normal soul masters couldn't tell what Huo Yuhao was doing at this moment, but how could he not know? Huo Yuhao was clearly using spatial power. Zhongli Wu was all too clear about who had the ability to control space. Ultimate Doluo, and only Ultimate Doluo, could control spatial power. How could Huo Yuhao accomplish that? Zhongli Wu had seen such power from his mother and from the Darkness Holy Dragon, the Dragon Emperor Doluo. Zhongli Wu had also seen this from Di Qian, when he was chasing him down. Di Qian had relied on his mastery over spatial power to repel Zhongli Wu and the others. Di Qian was clearly injured, but he could still launch a series of retaliations to the point where Zhongli Wu and the others had to escape wretchedly. They would have perished in the end if they hadn't escaped quickly enough. But such powers shouldn't appear on Huo Yuhao. How old is he? What's his cultivation? How can he have mastered the secret of spatial power? Had Huo Yuhao really mastered spatial power? The answer was no, because Huo Yuhao only had a brief and superficial understanding of spatial power. Zhongli Wu's suspicions were also correct, because only ultimate Duluos could control spatial power. More accurately put, only individuals with two soul cores could do so. A human with two soul cores could use his two soul cores connection to sense and feel everything in the world more intricately. Spatial power was among those things. Those who formed two soul cores through the yin-yang complement method would have a much easier time feeling and sensing everything, because their strength was produced as yin and yang clashed and fused in their bodies. There was a certain extent of spatial transformation embodied within them. Therefore, even though Huo Yuhao's control over spatial power was still very shallow, his ability to understand was even stronger than other ultimate Doluo. Faint light flickered as Huo Yuhao's expression grew strange, because his understanding of spatial power grew deeper with every break through space. What was spatial power? Spatial power was just different nodes of time. One who wished to master the secrets of spatial power also had to master the transformations of time. The secrets contained within this were extraordinarily profound. Those blades forced Huo Yuhao to understand spatial power a little better, and he couldn't evade every blade, because he was still a little unfamiliar with what he was doing. However, a single blade couldn't really hurt him with his icy war god's armor. The reason why he couldn't use spatial power to phase to someplace else was because he wasn't familiar enough with it. If the beast god had been here, so what if there wasn't any air around him to use? The beast god would penetrate directly through space and appear right in front of Zhongli Wu. But even so, Zhongli Wu was still greatly astonished. The blades suddenly stopped as the tornadoes appeared once more. There wasn't just a single tornado, but many small tornadoes concentrated and stacked together. The tornadoes were actually multiplying into each other, as they became an even larger one. The air was being torn apart, and some of the tornado's strength was even starting to create gashes in space. You can draw upon spatial power, can't you? Then I shall tear open space and mess everything up. Let's see how you can control space then. The beast god would have been able to control space if he were here, but Huo Yuhao couldn't really do that because he was just starting out. Huo Yuhao's body swayed amid the strong winds, and his icy war god's armor radiated intense dark blue light, and blocked the winds around him. However, even lower-tier soul masters could tell that he was expending a lot of soul power to do this. However, Huo Yuhao didn't seem to care. His movements were very slow, and his arms slowly closed around his body as a strange force appeared as his hands wrapped around himself. That was a small air flow, and the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion's silhouette appeared behind Huo Yuhao's back. Huo Yuhao was protecting this sphere like a jewel as it gradually took shape, and it was rotating in a direction opposite to the tornado. Does he plan to use this small air flow to resist my tornado? My tornado will just instantly consume it. Zhongli Wu's face was filled with contempt, but he didn't do anything. He wanted to defeat Huo Yuhao, but he didn't want to kill him. He could only convert Huo Yuhao into the Holy Ghost Church's holy son by capturing him, and only then could he maximize his profit. Zhongli Wu had chosen to enter a war of attrition from the beginning, but who knew that he had to consume so much, because of his tactics in the end. Zhongli Wu had sent 4 people, and 2 perished in battle, 1 was returned in exchange, while the last was just missing. Huo Yuhao's strength had far exceeded his expectations, and he had to be equivalent to a transcendent duel. Furthermore, Huo Yuhao was a transcendent duel with an ultimate martial soul. There had to be something peculiar about that soul tool on Huo Yuhao's body as well. Otherwise, he couldn't possibly become a transcendent duel at such a young age. But so what? Huo Yuhao still had to consume energy even if he was a transcendent duel, and he would definitely be defeated if he expended energy continuously. Therefore, what Zhongli Wu wanted to see most was for Huo Yuhao to continue using his soul power. He could only admit defeat once he was beyond a certain threshold. Zhongli Wu's tornado contained terrifying strength, but he had some way to minimize his own expenditure. This was his Bone Dragon King's doing, as it could perfectly control the element of wind, so that he could minimize the soul power that he had to use. The airflow in Huo Yuhao's arms slowly became bigger, but the size was relative. The small sphere started releasing its aura, but it was immediately broken once it touched the destructive cyclone. However, Zhongli Wu was unable to tell that Huo Yuhao was actually smiling under the icy war god's armor. In fact, he was revealing a very satisfied smile. He was smiling because this scenario was extremely similar to what he had experienced when he first tried to form his yin-yang complement soul cores. However, back then, it was a lot more dangerous than his current situation. Even though this tornado was extremely powerful, it was probably nothing compared to what he had to go through when he tried to form his first soul core. With the help of this tornado, he was improving his mastery over the icy storm he was forming with the controlling crane capturing dragon technique. At the same time, he was gaining a better understanding of the element of air while he was being buffeted by the tornado. This was no longer something that was within the realm of soul skills. It was a form of understanding that was required to create one's own soul skills. Even though Di Qian had never properly explained it to Huo Yuhao, he had gradually discovered the biggest benefit of the yin-yang complement soul cores from his past few battles. The biggest benefit was comprehension. It was an enhanced ability to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth, and was not something that could be innately developed. Heaven and earth were split into yin and yang. The formation of his yin-yang soul cores allowed Huo Yuhao to observe and comprehend many things he could not even see in the past. These things included spatial power, elemental energy, and many other finer details. Hence, even while he was fighting his opponents, he was able to sense the changes in some of these power around him, and gain a better comprehension of these powers, even though the others would not be able to do so. Right now, he was appreciating the power of wind, as well as the secrets behind wind-type elemental energy. These wind-type elements were being forcefully controlled. However, it was apparent that both Zhongli Wu and his beast spirit, the Bone Dragon King, were simply relying on soul power to control these elements. After all, the Bone Dragon King was but a beast spirit, and not an actual dragon, which had mastered the secrets of the element of air. Even though the Bone Dragon King had the ability to generate wind, it was not able to fully appreciate the intricacies behind wind-type power. Otherwise, it would no longer be the Bone Dragon King. It would have been the Silver Dragon King itself. Huo Yuhao was trying to sense the changes in the wind-type elements through his ice-type elements, as well as appreciate how gentle and agile the wind was. This was a golden opportunity for him to improve his understanding of wind power. How else was he going to find so much wind-type elemental energy under normal circumstances? As for the offensive power of the tornado, Huo Yuhao was not worried about it in the least. At the end of the day, Zhongli Wu was but a soul master, not a soul engineer. If a Class 9 soul engineer were to be the one attacking him instead, he would definitely not be using such a scattered form of attack. Even though the tornado was strong, its energy was very scattered. It would be extremely difficult for it to penetrate the icy war god's armor, a top-tier Class 9 soul tool. Furthermore, the icy war god's armor was built for defense. The divine ice crystals, which were used to make the armor, granted it immense defensive capabilities. On top of that, the wind from the tornado could not even be compared to Ma Xiaotao's ultimate fire, which had been extremely destructive. Hence, The flickering light on Huo Yuhao's icy war god's armor was created intentionally by Huo Yuhao to dupe Zhongli Wu into believing that he was expending a lot of power to counter the tornado. However, Zhongli Wu would not be duped that easily. After all, he had a wealth of battle experience. In less than half a minute, he realized that something was amiss. He started to realize that the color of his tornado was starting to change. Its original green color was now infused with tinges of blue. This blue did not belong to his wind-type elements. What was Huo Yuhao's martial soul? His main martial soul was his spirit eyes. At every point in time, Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection was enshrouding the entire battlefield. He was immediately able to react the moment he discovered that Zhongli Wu's aura was starting to change. The extremely concentrated air current, which was in his hand, was suddenly released as it collided with the huge tornado. An unbelievable sight formed before everyone's eyes. The golden sun and blue moon, which were behind Huo Yuhao, suddenly fused together when the icy tornado he released collided with the huge tornado. The gigantic tornado suddenly paused in the air before disintegrating into tiny tornadoes, which scrambled in every possible direction. The huge cluster of wind-type element energy instantly broke free from Zhongli Wu's control and scattered everywhere. Zhongli Wu was extremely frustrated after seeing how Huo Yuhao destroyed his tornado. He felt as though he had stripped a copious amount of elemental energy from his body at that instant. On top of that, he did not seem to be hurt at all. Zhongli Wu immediately recognized the problem at hand. Even though he was not aware of Huo Yuhao's two-soul cause, he was starting to sense that something wasn't quite right. The Bone Dragon King beneath his feet let out a low roar, following which, it tilted its humongous head upwards and released a green ball of light towards Huo Yuhao from its mouth. This ball of green light was not big. It was only about the size of a human head. This made it seem very disproportionate when compared to the size of the Bone Dragon King. Zhongli Wu pointed at the ball of green light, with the staff in his hand as the soul rings on his body shone. Streaks of light landed on the ball of green light, as the color of the ball became a lot darker. When Huo Yuhao used his spiritual detection on the ball of light, he was instantly startled by what he detected. Even though he didn't know what Zhongli Wu's move was called, he couldn't help but shiver in fear. This sensation was extremely similar to what he had experienced when he first used his spiritual detection to analyze the decomposition cannon shell. There was an insane amount of wind-type elemental energy compressed within that tiny ball of light. Its power was definitely several times stronger than that of a decomposition cannon. A streak of azure blue sword light descended from the sky and slashed accurately at the ball of light. Unparalleled chill, Empress Sword. The usually invincible ultimate ice was instantly pulverized the moment it came into contact with the ball of green light. Pulverized. Even my ice-type elemental energy was pulverized. How can Zhongli Wu control such concentrated and volatile wind-type energy? He must have borrowed that power from the Silver Dragon King. Very soon, the ball of green light was approaching Huo Yuhao. There was no way that he could use spatial power to evade the ball. After all, the surrounding space and void were already messed up by the violent and chaotic wind-type elemental energy. Huo Yuhao could not even use his instant teleportation. Even the icy war god's armor might not even be able to block this crazy ball of energy. In that case, I shall do this then. Huo Yuhao retracted his right first before punching it outwards. A sneer formed on Zhongli Wu's face. This ball of green light was called Extreme Wind. It was the strongest attack he could muster with the wind-type elemental energy he could control. By condensing the wind-type elements to an extremely dense state, he could slice an entire mountain with his extreme wind. Is he really planning to use his fist to block my extreme wind? I can't believe he isn't even using a soul skill to parry my attack. However, the sneering expression on his face only lasted for a short while. At the very next instant, the ball of green light disappeared. What? This is impossible. Zhongli Wu almost leaped out and exclaimed in rage. Even if Huo Yuhao was somehow able to survive after a humongous explosion, he would still be able to accept that as an outcome. However, the green ball had somehow vanished. This was something he could not accept. That was a ball that contained incredibly violent and chaotic wind-type energy. How could it disappear just like this? Of course, Huo Yuhao would not be telling him the answer. When he launched his fist, he was actually borrowing the effects of spatial power. Even though the space and void around him had been messed up by the wind, he did not stop chanting his incantations. A small spatial gate had opened up before his fist after his incantations were complete. This door was a spectral gate that led to the spectral demiplane. Hence, he was able to direct the extreme wind effortlessly into the spectral demiplane. Huo Yuhao was definitely unable to accurately determine how much damage the extreme wind would do within the spectral demiplane. However, he knew it would not land at the same place as where Ma Xiaodao was. However, Huo Yuhao did not manage to achieve this at no cost. He had to invest a lot of effort and energy to stabilize the space before his fist in order to direct the extreme wind into his spectral demiplane. If not for his increased understanding of spatial power, he might not have been able to pull it off. After the extreme wind vanished, the surrounding space became normal again. And Huo Yuhao's body disappeared at the very next instant. The dark sky above them suddenly became incredibly cold as snowflakes started to fall from the sky. Snowy dance of ultimate ice. Even though Zhongli Wu was displeased with how things had turned out, he was able to regain his composure very quickly. The air around him suddenly became extremely restless. The green wind vanished, to be replaced by intense fire. The sky instantly turned red as the surrounding temperature, which had just plunged, started to rise again. Huge amounts of fiery meteors ravaged the sky as they collided with the snowflakes released by Huo Yuhao. Is this what the Silver Dragon King can do? It has moved onto the element of fire after controlling the element of air. As the snowy dance of ultimate ice collided with the fiery meteor shower, brilliant flashes of red and blue illuminated the sky. While the fiery meteor shower released by Zhongli Wu through his Bone Dragon King was not of ultimate fire, its quantity was a lot greater than what Huo Yuhao had summoned. With the support of his incredible soul power, the meteor shower brought its insanely destructive power almost everywhere. Huo Yuhao's snowy dance of ultimate ice was unable to even fully take shape. Rings of fiery light were also radiating constantly around Zhongli Wu's body. This prevented Huo Yuhao from getting near him. The power of the fire was a lot more frightening than that of the wind previously. It was a lot more violent and explosive. The bones on the Bone Dragon King had turned completely red as it flapped its huge wings. It was like a gigantic fire dragon. Neutralizing ice with fire was undoubtedly a wise decision. This was especially smart when Huo Yuhao had already expended large amounts of soul power in his previous battles. Zhongli Wu was following his plan closely as he aimed to drain Huo Yuhao of his soul power. He would not be giving him any chance to retaliate. If they were to compete purely based on techniques, Huo Yuhao might have a chance to showcase his abilities. However, when they were competing on soul power, it would depend on who had a higher rank and who had larger reserves of soul power. Huo Yuhao would never be able to evade such attacks, no matter how powerful his spiritual detection was. It was not hard for Zhongli Wu to launch attacks with huge areas of effect. Hence, very soon, Huo Yuhao reappeared in the sky. The effects of the snowy dance of ultimate ice were still present, as snowflakes neutralized every fiery meteor that was about to hit him. Huo Yuhao seemed to be suppressed by Zhongli Wu quite badly. Even the icy war god's armor on his body was starting to show charred marks. Zhongli Wu remained on the head of his Bone Dragon King. His face revealed a solemn expression, and no one could tell what he was feeling. However, everyone could tell that he had gained the upper hand in this battle. This type of battle was extremely shameless for the evil soul masters, especially when he was fighting Huo Yuhao, who was already weakened by his previous battles. However, evil soul masters would never be concerned with intangible things like shame. Huo Yuhao's audible sigh could be heard by everyone who was spectating this battle. It seemed like he was at his wits' end. Even though Zhongli Wu was undeniably shameless, it was still a brilliant move. He had chosen to launch a head-on attack. Besides, he was even able to control the direction of his meteor shower to focus it on Huo Yuhao, forcing him to block the fiery meteors. Everyone knew what the outcome would be if this were to continue. Is this the power of fire? Violent and cruel. While Huo Yuhao was sighing, he was actually smiling as he sensed the transformation in the fire-type elements around him. It was rumored that the Silver Dragon King could control the following elements: fire, water, earth, wind, light, dark, and space. He could also control mutated elements, which included lightning, ice, and many other elements. This Bone Dragon King was only blessed by the Silver Dragon King, and was definitely unable to control every single element. Huo Yuhao wished it could control more so that he could learn more about the different elements. When Huo Yuhao sensed that Zhongli Wu was about to use fire to curb his ice powers, he almost burst out laughing. After all, he possessed ultimate ice. On top of that, his icy war god's armor was built from divine ice crystals. It usually took more than 10,000 years just to form a small piece of such crystal. They were naturally extremely resistant to fire-type energy. If the wind earlier was not able to penetrate the armor, the fiery meteor shower would not even stand a chance. Huo Yuhao had no idea why Zhongli Wu had decided to use such a method to attack him. However, he admitted that it was a pretty good experience feeling the beauty of the fire-type element. Unfortunately, as someone who naturally possessed ice-type powers, Huo Yuhao would always struggle with developing a deep understanding of the element of fire, no matter how powerful his comprehension was. This was an elemental problem, and it was not related to his comprehension ability. After seeing how ineffective his continuous fiery meteor shower was, Zhongli Wu waved the staff in his hand again, as the Bone Dragon King tilted its head upwards to release a blue fiery ball at Huo Yuhao. Similar to the extreme wind earlier, this blue flaming ball was undoubtedly insanely powerful. Of course, it disappeared in the same way as the extreme wind. Huo Yuhao could only apologize to the spectral demiplane later. The sky suddenly quieted down in an eerie manner. So far, both sides had battled in a fairly balanced way, as though both parties were just trying to better understand each other's abilities. Even though it looked as though Huo Yuhao was at a disadvantage, Zhongli Wu had probably expended more soul power than him. At least, this was what Huo Yuhao believed. Even though he had also expended his soul power during this period of time, he was able to get away with expending less soul power because of his icy war god's armor. Huo Yuhao. Zhongli Wu's cold voice rang in the air. Huo Yuhao stared calmly at Zhongli Wu and replied, "Yes. What do you have to say?" Zhongli Wu suddenly smiled. It seemed as though he was genuinely very happy. "Do you really think you're very smart? Do you really think you will be able to negate most of my attacks with minimal soul power by using your Class 9 soul tool?" Huh? Huo Yuhao was caught off guard by Zhongli Wu's words. "What are you trying to say?" Zhongli Wu flashed a smile and said, "I just want to tell you that you're wrong. I was just charging up my energy while I was throwing wind and fire at you." Charging up energy. Huo Yuhao was not sure what Zhongli Wu was saying. Zhongli Wu said, "There's no need to hide it from you. After all, you will be one of us very soon." Only Huo Yuhao could hear what he was saying. "After all, my Bone Dragon King is not a real dragon. It cannot use the toughness of a dragon's body to negate the detrimental effects brought by its usage of different elements. Hence, it always requires time to make some adjustments to its body before releasing any elemental ability. Even though it has consumed so many spirits from the soul beasts I have fed it, it still needs this annoying warm-up phase. It can only perform at its greatest potential afterward. My Bone Dragon King might have only inherited the fire-type and wind-type elements from the Silver Dragon King, but its mastery of the two elements is almost perfect. Hence, what you will be facing up next is the frightening combination of fire and wind." After finishing his sentence, the light around Zhongli Wu's body suddenly intensified, as the Bone Dragon King beneath him regained its black color. The sky above everyone suddenly turned both green and red. Once again, fiery meteors started to appear in the sky. However, they were all blue this time round. Gusts of green wind started to appear once more. It was well understood by everyone present that the wind would help that enhance the power of the fire. At the next instant, The blue fiery meteors were like cannon shells which sped straight towards Huo Yuhao. The frightening aura released by the meteor shower created a burning smell in the air. A scary suffocating atmosphere enveloped the entire area 50 kilometers from their battleground. Elder Xian, who had managed to maintain his composure all this while, suddenly revealed a startled expression. The aura Zhongli Wu was radiating right now was actually on par with his. Even an ultimate dueler like him would have to be extremely focused and careful when handling the attack Zhongli Wu had just released. In fact, he might even have to unleash his martial soul true body. Zhongli Wu's power had exceeded Elder Xian's estimation. Zhongli Wu was obviously not an ultimate dueler yet. However, he was at least a rank 97 transcendent dueler. The most frightening thing was how he was able to elevate his power to that of an ultimate dueler with his peculiar beast spirit. No wonder he was one of the greatest evil soul masters in this continent. If he were to successfully become an ultimate dueler in the future, his abilities would definitely be a lot stronger than those of the death god dueler. How was Huo Yuhao going to handle an attack which even an ultimate dueler had to fear? Juzi had already stood up after seeing Zhongli Wu's attack. She was clenching her fists as she gazed intently at the sky. Of course, she would not stand up in joy because Zhongli Wu had gained the upper hand. Instead, she only stood up because she was worried about the man who was about to be caught between fire and wind. Can he really survive a blow like this? A faint light flickered as Huo Yuhao revealed a cold expression on his face. It's finally here. This is what Zhongli Wu is truly capable of. In that case, it's also time for him to see what I'm capable of. A faint streak of icy blue light was released from Huo Yuhao's body as it shot straight up into the sky. The fiery atmosphere in the sky was instantly weakened. An insane soul power fluctuation swept towards the fire and wind which was swarming towards Huo Yuhao as Zhongli Wu's attack paused for a short while. A blue pillar of light more than 10 meters in diameter shot straight into the sky and illuminated the sky above the fiery clouds. The blue moon that was behind Huo Yuhao became even more radiant. This also resulted in his icy war god's armor radiating a more intense blue light. His frightening ultimate ice was actually concentrating on his body. Zhongli Wu was not the only person who had not gone all out in the previous moments. Huo Yuhao had also not used his full power to fend off the attacks launched at him by Zhongli Wu. Now, their battle had only just begun. A short dagger suddenly appeared in Huo Yuhao's hand. After noticing the appearance of the dagger, Zhongli Wu's pupils contracted slightly. This was obviously one of the items Huo Yuhao had chosen to bet with. He had referred to it as a godly weapon. To be honest, Zhongli Wu was not particularly interested in this dagger. After all, a powerful weapon which was full of ultimate ice power was not of much use for him. However, no one would ever worry about having too many precious items. It would still be a good thing for him if he were actually able to get his hands on it. However, Zhongli Wu was genuinely interested to see how Huo Yuhao would use this dagger to defend himself against his wind-infused fiery meteor shower. Huo Yuhao gave him the answer he wanted very soon. Wielding the short dagger with his right hand, Huo Yuhao slashed it forward with a gentle and moderately fast movement. A streak of blue dagger light was immediately emitted as light was projected forward close to 10 meters. By then, the blue meteors were approaching Huo Yuhao. However, they immediately vanished upon coming into contact with the flash of light released by the dagger. They did not even leave a single trace of smoke. Huo Yuhao started to increase the speed of his slashing motion. He flitted across the sky like a gust of wind with nimble footsteps, as the blue pillar of light followed wherever he went. The pillar was essentially functioning like a vacuum chamber, which ensured that the violent air current in the sky would not restrict his movements. He was as quick as lightning. With every slash he made, a meteor would vanish. The people around him were starting to notice how Huo Yuhao was actually moving so fast that the meteors were unable to catch up with him. Even though Zhongli Wu had used a lot more soul power to release such an overwhelming attack, its effects could not be compared with Huo Yuhao's, as only a small portion of his meteors would be able to come into contact with him. Huo Yuhao was starting to find a rhythm to this as he continually used the dagger in his hand to handle the meteors that were coming his way. No matter how the meteors tried to smash him, surround him, or encircle him, they just could not hit him. If one were to say that Zhongli Wu had held the upper hand throughout the course of the battle so far, then it would be apt to say that Huo Yuhao had managed to gain absolute control within the advantage that Zhongli Wu had seemingly created. The sigh of the frozen goddess, morning dew dagger. Huo Yuhao had finally found the perfect stage to showcase the true power of the dagger. Its powerful blade light allowed it to slice through any flame which lay before it. With the help of his icy war god's armor and the morning dew dagger, Huo Yuhao was able to survive an onslaught which would even threaten the life of an ultimate duel. Has he been withholding his power all this time? Yang Xiaozhe's jaw dropped as he stared at Huo Yuhao, who was flitting across the sky. He finally understood why Huo Yuhao dared to challenge Zhongli Wu, even after defeating 4 transcendent duel. Huo Yuhao was a lot more powerful than what he had thought. Transcendent duel. A transcendent duel with an ultimate strength martial soul. It was probably not just that. Even though Huo Yuhao's equipment played an important role, they would never have been able to exhibit their power without his abilities. Right now, Huo Yuhao felt as though the morning dew dagger had become an extension of his body. Every simple action he made was able to harness the dagger's brilliance. Wherever the flash of light radiated by the dagger landed, the ice-type element in the air would immediately congregate. There was always a layer of icy mist surrounding the blade of the dagger. This was the morning dew dagger. The morning dew dagger, which was encrusted with the gem of the frozen goddess. This was a real godly weapon. Huo Yuhao knew that no one, including Zhongli Wu and Zhu Zi, had believed him when he had revealed how the morning dew dagger was a godly weapon. This was because everyone in the world of soul masters believed that the strongest weapon ought to be a soul tool. In their eyes, a godly weapon was a class 9 soul tool. However, it was apparent that the morning dew dagger was not just any soul tool. This was a culmination of power and energy that did not exist in their world. A faint smile formed on Huo Yuhao's face. He had never felt the need to try to convince others to believe him. He knew he just had to show it to them. The wind-infused fiery meteor shower lasted for a couple of minutes. When the last meteor was finally destroyed by the morning dew dagger, the sky returned to its normal state. Even the bone dragon king returned to its original black color. Zhongli Wu stared at Huo Yuhao, who was wielding the dagger in a composed manner, as he nodded gently. Now I finally believe that dagger is a godly weapon. There's no way you could have blocked my attack without it. Huo Yuhao did not try to deny it as he nodded gently. If you hadn't lived for 100 years more than me, you would not have been qualified to stand before me. After hearing how Zhongli Wu was trying to poke at the fact that he had relied on a godly weapon, Huo Yuhao could not help but make fun of the pointless extra 100 years Zhongli Wu had lived. Even after cultivating for an additional 100 years, they were still somewhat on par. Zhongli Wu released a cold grunt as he raised the staff in his hand once again. The bone dragon king beneath him repeated the same action of tilting its head upwards. Its gigantic wings started to flap in a vigorous manner as Zhongli Wu's body started to grow bigger at an incredibly fast rate. The image which had been suspended behind his back all this while was gradually fusing with his body. His 7th soul ring, which was red, started to radiate an intense light. This was the first time that Huo Yuhao was going to see Zhongli Wu unleash a soul skill. Was he about to use his martial soul true body? Aren't all of his soul skills of the strengthening kind? Then, what use does his martial soul true body have? Would it allow him to fuse with the bone dragon king? Even though Huo Yuhao was not sure what Zhongli Wu was up to, he was not overly concerned. After all, this battle was meant to be the biggest test for his abilities. The stronger the enemy, the better it was for him, as he would only learn more and become stronger. Yang Xiaozhe's worries were non-existent in Huo Yuhao's eyes. He had never thought that he would actually be killed by Zhongli Wu. This was the confidence that belonged to a soul master, who possessed a pair of yin-yang complement soul cores. After becoming 10 meters tall, Zhongli Wu's body stopped growing. Right now, his entire body was enshrouded by darkness. Compared to the 100-meter or 1,000-meter tall martial soul true body of a titled dueler, his 10-meter tall martial soul true body did not seem very impressive. However, Huo Yuhao was visibly startled, even though no one could see his facial expression under his visor, after Zhongli Wu's martial soul true body was complete. The staff that Zhongli Wu had been holding also became bigger as Zhongli Wu expanded. His staff had evolved into a sickle after he had grown to his 10-meter size. The blade of the sickle was about 10 meters long. Hence, it looked strangely disproportionate for a 10-meter tall Zhongli Wu to wield a 10-meter long sickle. However, after his transformation, an indescribable pressure started to exert itself on Huo Yuhao from all directions. The overwhelming, formless pressure made Huo Yuhao feel as though his spirit was about to be squeezed out from his body. This video will end here.